Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good afternoon for all the participants, panel of assessors, key officers, last but not least, my colleagues, fellow panel members. Today we are going to conduct a workshop on stakeholders engagement on the draft rubrics for evaluation on standards, COPPA, Open and Distance Learning, and COPPA. So this workshop will be presented in two subsections. First, the first section is on the general framework, where the principle of the development of rubrics for the evaluation of standard will be presented. And after that, since this involves the development of on three documents, documents of codes of practice. So there will be three per session that will be conducted after the general framework is being shared. So before I proceed further with the briefings on the general framework, I would like to thank MQA, Malaysian Qualifications Agency, for appointing the panel member in doing this development process. At the same time, I also would like to thank everybody in the panel member team for assisting me to develop the documents as well as to coordinate this workshop, as well as the secretariat, MK secretariat who are managing the session. So this, before I proceed further, I would like to mention the list of panel member here. I'm the chair of the panel member, and then within the team, we have Professor Engineer Dr. Surveyor Suhaimi Abdul Talib, formerly from UiTM. Then we have Professor Madya Technologist Dr. Muhammad Fahmi Miskun from University Technology Malaysia Melaka. Professor Technologist Dr. Titik Hawa Abrahman from Asia University. Dr. Mak Isnin Saleh from UPSI. And we have also Madam Lilian K. Siu Yik from UCSI, who is also the standard writer for these three documents. And then the development process consists of several stages. We begin with the panel meeting, the meeting among the panel members, as well as the secretariat. We also invite within some of the meeting several MPA officers to get feedback and to get opinions. So there are 10 meetings on the development of rubrics prior to this workshop. After that, we come up with a draft, and then the first draft has been discussed and deliberated in details in a workshop number 8 in March last year, 3-day workshop. And then after that, after we come up with the first draft, then the document was consolidated through for the editorial editing. We have 3 meetings on that, and then the 3 documents has been presented for opinions to the MPA senior officers on February this year. Following that, we have the stakeholders engagement today. In fact, for today we have 2 sessions. We conducted the session 1 this morning, about 3 hours, for participants from higher education providers. So for the session 2, we also have similar agenda, also about 3 hours or 2.5 hours rather, on the similar with similar presentation. So you can see from in this program, for the program for session 2. This is for panel of assessors as well as of MQA officers. So for the first part of the session, I will be giving you the general framework of the rubric developments until about 3:15, where we have a break, and then the participant will be directed to the parallel session. So our presentation will consist of 3 documents to be presented by my colleagues. So there will be session on COPPA, there will be session on COPPA ODL as well as for COPPA. After that, we will have Q&A session. So the Q&A session will be in the parallel session. So during the general framework, there will not be questions, but of course, you can direct your question even though it is for the general framework in the parallel session. So hopefully we can conclude our agenda today by 5 p.m. But of course, it is not limited to that, because if you have many questions, you can either type in chat or ask directly in the Q&A session, or at the same time, there are also feedback form that MP has provided. You can also direct your question or your feedback to that all the channel mentioned. So because this session is where we want to get feedback from you. Of course, we have the draft that is being shared through the links provided in the emails. But then your feedback is very important in order for us to improve the document before it will be launched. So the objective of this workshop is to define the rubric descriptors for each of the three documents, COPPA, COPPA ODL, and COPPA standards, as well as the clusters of standards. So I would use the term the cluster of standards because the rubric descriptors will be defined not just based on standards, but we are going to put a similar standard together. And then we are going to use attainment level 1 to 5. This attainment level should be familiar to many of you, especially for panel of assessors, because this is the same attainment level that has been in use. At the same time, the second objective is to guide evaluation of the 3 documents, the standards from the 3 documents by panel of assessors during provisional accreditation, full accreditation, and compliance evaluation. We refer the compliance evaluation to the evaluation or accreditation, rather evaluation after full accreditation, 5 years or depending on the cycle of the program. And then the last objective for this workshop is to guide self-evaluation of COPPA, COPPA ODL, and COPPA standards by HCP during the self-review of an academic program in preparation of the full provisional accreditation, full accreditation, and compliance evaluation. Okay, and of course, the session for HCP has been conducted this morning. And then, as I said, we are going to use 3 documents, but we are going to only refer to the second edition of all 3 documents. The document is available in the MQ website. So we are going to refer to, our rubrics are going to be based on standards in COPPA second edition, published in 2018, COPPA Open Distance Learning, second edition, published in 2019, and COPPA Code of Practice for TVET Program Accreditation, second edition, published in 2020. So that is the background of this briefing. The next slide and the next and subsequent slide will give you the principles and methodology, how the rubrics will be can be used. Okay, but before that, I would like to give principles, several principles that has been used in developing this rubric. The first principle is the structure of the rubrics, where the rubrics are developed based and standardized based on COPPA, COPPA ODL, and COPPA standards. They are mapped based on 7 areas of evaluation and sub-areas, after which the 3 rubric documents are to be produced. So in this on this matter, we are fortunate that the COPPA, COPPA ODL, and COPTA are developed based on the same structure, 7 area of evaluation, and then within that 7 area of evaluation, roughly the sub area are similar to each other, especially for COPPA and COPPA ODL. We have the exact similarity between both. Of course, we have some variation in COPTA, some just a little bit of variation. This due to the specific requirement of TVET's program in addition to the general program. And then related standard within the same sub area are clustered before the rubric descriptors are defined. So we notice there are related standards who are within some similar process, similar criteria, or within the same PDCA, for example, process, are clustered together before the rubric descriptor are defined, whereas non-related standard remain standalone. So there are also standards that trying to address specific requirement that we cannot cluster, or it's not related directly to the other standards, that will be left alone. And also, especially for provisional accreditation, only applicable standards for PA, FA, and CE with modal verb denoting requirements or obligation, such as must, shall, need, are chosen to form a rubric. So basically, we have PA where the purpose of provisional accreditation is to provide some kind of approval of the fulfillment of standards during the program design, curriculum design. So there are standards who are meant to be evaluated during implementation that are not really applicable during PA. So that will be excluded during PA. So that's what I mean by applicable standards. And also there are statements, particularly in COPTA, that also represent requirement, but the statement does not contain must. Instead they contain such statement contain shall or need. That also taken, that those statements are also taken for the purpose of the rubric development. And then for attainment level, since we are going to use attainment level 1 to 5, we will use AL3, attainment level 3, as fulfillment of the standards as per prescribed. Then only if we want to consider the achievement at higher level, for example AL4, that AL4 can only be considered after all elements of AL3 being achieved. Similarly, if you want to consider attainment level of 5, only after all elements of AL4 is being met. So there's no so by doing so, there's no instances like the program fulfill AL5 but doesn't fulfill AL4. So we try to avoid that. So based on the scale, these are the scale, which is actually the scale that is already familiar to all of you. So AL3 is set as meeting the requirement. So we are based on the Likert scale, 5-point scale. And then AL3 also is referred to as adequacy level. So here AL3 is defined as adequately addressing the standards or fulfillment of standards as indicated directly by the statements. So by using AL3 as the baseline or the adequacy level, we can also define AL1 and 2. AL1 represent inadequate, non-fulfillment of standard leading to major deficiency and requiring major correction or an improvement. Whereas for AL2, it is in between 1 and 3. So it is defined as less adequate, non-fulfillment of standards leading to minor deficiency and requiring minor correction and improvement. And then we have also AL4 and AL5. So where AL4 and AL5, of course, we are looking into achievement that is higher and much higher than AL3. So for AL4, we are looking into elements of efficiency and effectiveness. Thus, AL4 is defined as addressing standards efficiently and effectively, indicating that the HEP internal qualification system is in control of the respective processes. And AL5 is looking into elements of good or best practices or exemplary practices which could be benchmarked by others. So this is the principle when we that has been used in developing the descriptors for the rubric. This also applicable for full accreditation and compliance evaluation. For provisional accreditation, since the purpose of accreditation is to approve the program during its design stage. So there are elements of AL4 and AL5 is very difficult or impossible to be evaluated. Because AL4, AL5 can only be demonstrated when the standard is being implemented. The program has been implemented, and the standards can only be evaluated effectively with evidence after the program is being implemented. So for this matter, for provisional accreditation, we are proposing the evaluation to be limited to AL3 only. So for provisional accreditation, the evaluation of standards or clusters of standards will be based on 3-point scale. So no AL4, no AL5. But at the same time, we still set AL3 as adequacy level, and the definition of AL1 and AL2 as well as AL3 is similar to in the previous slide. So that's define the generic descriptors of all AL1 until AL5. So then we come to the document, the structure of the document. So all the 3 documents that will be produced will adopt the same outline or the same structure. It begins with introduction, where the general framework will be explained. And then after that, since there will be applicable and non-applicable standards for program accreditation, so section 2 is dedicated to provisional accreditation, because there are a number of standards. Those are related to implementation, and continuous improvement may not be applicable and very difficult to be evaluated during provisional accreditation. So section 2 is dedicated for that, while many are all the standards will be applicable during full accreditation and compliance evaluation. So we dedicate section 3 for that kind of accreditation. And then section 4 will give the briefing or the explanation on how the rating will be computed and presented, and then how the final recommendation will be prepared for consideration of during the approval process. So for this slide, I'm going to give you the framework, mainly the explanation about section 1, and also the general framework on how the rubric for section 2 and 3 is being developed. And then I will also cover section 4. So we start with the rubrics, and then for the purpose of to demonstrate the development of the rubric and the descriptors, I will show for the area 1. For the other area, it will be briefed by my colleagues in the parallel session. So for area 1, I will use COPPA, but of course after this I also will highlight the similarity that can be expected in COPPA ODL and also COPPA. So if we focus first on COPPA, in COPPA area 1, we have 3 sub-areas. First is statement of educational objectives of academic program and learning outcomes. And secondly, we have 1.2, program development, process, content, structure, and learning teaching methods. And 1.3 is about program delivery. So each of these sub areas contains 5 to 6 standards. So based on the principle of clustering of standards, we are going to cluster this standard to several smaller number. For example, 1.1 will be clustered into 2 clusters only. 1.2 also we have similar number, but of course the clustering is based on the practicality also, how the standard is connected to each other, whether or not it belongs to the similar process, interconnected process, or whether or not they are totally different. So in 1.3, we observe many of the clusters independently represent different dimensions. So the clustering is limited when we analyze program delivery standards. So in the end, for area 1, we have, even though we have 17 standards, of course we have 17 standards that has been clustered into 9 clusters. So 2 plus 2 plus 5 is 9. And then, of course, this one is directly applicable for full accreditation and compliance evaluation. But for provisional accreditation, there are many standards that is not applicable during the design stage, particularly the program delivery, because when a standards on program delivery is being formulated, the standards already projected that the program has been delivered. And then it can be evaluated only at least during the full accreditation. So for the purpose of PA, provisional accreditation, even though we still have applicable standards in 1.1 and 1.2, but 1.3 is totally excluded. So for program delivery, it is not applicable for provisional accreditation. So as a result, we only have 11 standards applicable during provisional accreditation, which lead to 4 clusters. So you can see here, there are clustering being made, but if we expand to other areas, these are the statistics. Okay, of course, we can see for full accreditation, roughly the numbers is similar, but there is one standard that where we still cannot measure during the full accreditation. We can only measure during compliance evaluation. But then we have roughly only 50% standards that can be measured during provisional accreditation. So the numbers is as given in the table. While we have 98 standards altogether, it is clustered into 50 or 49 for full accreditation and compliance evaluation. And for provisional accreditation, we have 48 standards, which is clustered into 28. So during provisional accreditation, the panel only need to evaluate 48 standards, and then the rating only being given for 28 clusters. For your information, the one standard that is not applicable during full accreditation is the alumni, because at that time, if the alumni section is in 3.5, you can see there's one standard missing if you compare the number of PA and CE, because during the full accreditation, the program is yet to have their alumni, at least alumni of the program. Okay. So coming back to the development of rubrics, so how the descriptors is being formulated. So you need to recall the standards within all the sub areas. For example, if we focus firstly on 1.1, we have 5 standards. I'm going to show how these 5 standards is being clustered into 2 clusters. At the same time, we also do the mapping. So since, as I said before, we are very fortunate to have a similar structure between all these 3 documents. So you can see the mapping is being done to ensure that we can compare the rubrics from COPPA to COPPA ODL as well as to COPPA. But of course, there are some small difference when we go into COPPA. For example, in this case, you can see in COPPA, the requirement on educational objective is separated from learning outcomes. So based on our principle, the clustering cannot cross the sub-area. So we are going to create one cluster, even though the program educational objective in COPPA only have one standard. So the numbers of clusters also slightly different, but we remain with the same principle. I will show you the statistics of overall clustering process towards the end of the slide. But for now, we are going to concentrate on COPPA because this gives you the principle or the methodology behind how the clustering is being done. So remember, for 1.1, we have 5 standards that will be clustered into 2 clusters. So the first 3 standards is listed here for COPPA, COPPA ODL, and COPPA. And then we do the numbering of clusters like this. So 1.1 is 1.1 here, cluster 1.1, I mean, refer to the sub-area, and A and B refer to the number within the sub-area, number of clusters within the sub-area. But of course, it will follow, because this one will be produced as a self-contained document, so if for the sub-area. So even though 1.1 in COPPA is mapped to 1.2 in COPPA, so the number of clusters, the numbering of clusters in COPPA will follow COPPA sub-area. That's why we have clusters 1.2A. So, and then if we go in depth into the standard, there are some small variation, like in ODL, they also put the requirement for ODL policy of HEP and so on. There is a small variation, but need to be taken into account when developing the rubrics. So based on these 3 standards, so I'm going to again focus on COPPA, but the methodology of the other 2 documents is the same. So what we are going to do is we are going to develop, but we are start with AL3. So based on these standards, because AL3 targets to target to fulfill the document, the standards at adequacy level. So meaning to say that we just repeat the statement, except the model verb must now is changed to is. Okay, so you can see how that is being developed. The second standard is also being incorporated as the second requirement, and then the third one, the third standard 113 is being incorporated. So sometimes we just put the descriptors in form of list, sometimes in form of this combined phrases, and sometimes in form of rewording, because sometimes we need to reword the standards, but in the end we target the same kind of achievement. So based on this, now we can define AL3. And then based on AL3, now we can also replicate with other codes of practice, like COPPA ODL and so on. But of course, there are some variations, as I said. COPPA ODL also adds some phrases with regards to ODL policy, and COPPA also added some requirements based on the requirement, the specific requirement for TVET's program. So based on that, now we can develop AL1 and AL2. For AL1, we are looking into non-fulfillment of the standards in totality. So that's why if this is the worst case scenario where none of the standard is fulfilled, if the program fulfilled at least one of the requirements within the cluster, they manage to get AL2. So for AL2, the program fulfilled at least one of the following, the following 3 requirements. And then for AL4 and AL5, remember for AL4, we are looking into the efficiency and effectiveness. Of course, for PA, it's okay to have only need assessment for program approval. But after the program is run for 5 years, for example, and then the program is ready for FA, we are looking into whether or not the need assessment has been updated. So that is required to get AL4. And then for AL5, whether or not we are looking into the elements that the needs assessment is benchmarked to ensure currency and relevance of the program particulars. So that is the kind of L4 and L5 that we are looking into, so that it will drive towards program sustainability. Okay, so that is for the first cluster. Of course, we have standalone clusters in 1.1 COPPA. Because this is standalone, this can be translated directly into the rubrics for AL3. You can see here we just change must be to R. Then that will define AL3, and then eventually we can also define AL1, AL2 for provisional accreditation, and subsequently AL4 and AL5 for full accreditation and compliance evaluation. Again, the principle is similar. For AL1, it is non-fulfillment at all, totally inadequate. For AL2, it is partially adequate. And for AL4, it contains the elements of efficiency and effectiveness. And AL5, it contains elements that the practice can be benchmarked by others. Okay, so that is the first cluster in COPPA for 1.1. The next cluster is to combine the rest two standards into the second cluster in 1.1. So since we have two more clusters, and then it is related to each other. One is about the compliance to MQF level descriptors and 5 clusters of MQF domains or learning outcomes. Another is to look into the career and further study option for the program. So this requirement can be combined into the second clusters of 1.1. We call it as 1.1b. And then from that, we can combine. In this case, we just combine the two statements to define the descriptors for AL3, and for AL1, AL2, we just change the model verb to represent inadequacy and partial adequacy for L1 and L2 respectively. And for L4 and L5, again, for L4, we are looking into elements of efficiency and effectiveness. And for L5, we are looking into elements that leads to good practices, best practices, and exemplary practices. Okay, so that is the principle behind the formulation of rubrics for 1.1. For 1.2, we can also repeat the same thing, but I'm not going, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go into the same process, but rather just want to explain the clustering process. So in 1.2, we have 1.2 for COPPA, mapped to 1.2 for COPPA ODL, and 1.3 for COPPA. This sub-area contains 5 to 7 standards, depends on which code of practices you refer to. And in the end, it is these standards are clustered into 2 clusters. So the first clusters, roughly, it refers to similar elements in all 3 documents. So the first cluster is about the autonomy, the appropriate process that must be in place to develop the curriculum, and the consultation with stakeholders. So all the code of practices address the same thing. And then I would like to also stress here, there are terms used in the standards. The department here refers normally to college, schools, or faculty. You can also refer to the department, but in COPPA, normally the department is referred to those within the units. The units within the HGP that is assigned to deliver the program, and then has some level of autonomy. So that level of autonomy normally being given to entities such as faculty. But of course, you can also look into the combination of faculty and departments in carry out the duty. So, and also we have that the HGP, normally referred to as institution, and the program. Okay, so in this case, this is the responsibility of the department, or rather the faculty, if we want to associate with the internal governance of the institution, must have sufficient autonomy to design curriculum and to utilize the allocated resources necessary for implementation. The department must also have appropriate process to develop the curriculum, leading to approval of the highest authority of the HGP, and the department must consult the stakeholder in development of curriculum, including education expert as appropriate. So that is for COPPA. We have also similar statements for COPPA ODL and COPTA. So again, we are looking into developing AL1 to 3. For L3, the checking or the evaluation is based on 3 requirements that need to be fulfilled by the department. And then AL1 is a checklist. None has been fulfilled. AL2 partially been fulfilled. At least one of the 3 requirements fulfilled. And for the fourth and fifth, AL4 and AL5 achievement, while looking into the element of effectiveness and efficiency. And for 5, we are looking into good elements of good practices as exemplary practices. Okay, so these are the first cluster in 1.2, and then we also have the remaining standards in 1.2 that has been clustered into another clusters. So you can see here there are some variation. So for COPPA, we have clustered 3 standards, but since COPPA ODL is written slightly different in a way that for 1.2 COPPA ODL also include some more requirements like C, but doesn't make mandatory for co-curricular activities. So there are some variation, but the development of descriptors is based on each requirement within its own code of practice. Same with COPPA. So there are 4 standards being combined into one cluster. So as a result, you can see here, if you compare side by side from COPPA to COPPA ODL, we have some 16 to 20 standards being clustered to 9 or 11 standards based on each. Okay, but I'm yet to cover 1.3. Yeah. So 1.3 is the example where not many can be clustered together because it represents different dimension or independent process. For example, we only managed to cluster 2 standards. If I'm referred to COPPA, so 1.3.1, which about the responsibility of the department to ensure the effective program delivery, plus the governance aspect where the program must have full-time coordinator or program leader and a team of course instructor or course coordinator. So that can be combined because it represents the program governance. But at the same time, we cannot combine the other standards. For example, 132 is talking about the program information to be disseminated to students, like student handbook and so on. 1.4 is about conducive learning environment. Again, it is independent criteria that need to be evaluated separately. 135 is about innovation in teaching and learning. Elements of scholarship in teaching and learning that has to be evaluated separately also. And 1.6 is about the feedback from stakeholder that has been used, that need to be used to improve the program delivery. So these are the standalone standards that is within 1.3. So we also observe similar kind of standards in the other two code of practices. So that concludes roughly the process of developing the descriptors. Now I'm going into how this finding can be consolidated. But before that, I would like to show some statistics of numbers. How many applicable standards in program provisional accreditation. You can see out of about 100, nearly 100 standards, only 48 standards become applicable. That's across the board, roughly. But within that 48, only about 60%, roughly, can be where the clusters can be created. Okay, so about 28 to 29 clusters formed from 48 standards. And then the weights also, we also decide on the weights. You can see here we put higher weights for 1 and 2 because during provisional accreditation, the emphasis is more on program design or curriculum design. This weight will be used to evaluate the score later. And for full accreditation, you can see the weight has changed. But of course, you can also give feedback for the weight if you think that the weight should be slightly different. For full accreditation, you can see nearly all the standards can be evaluated. As I said, there are also standards which cannot be evaluated, which involve alumni. That's why you can see on out of the number of standards, only one standard cannot be evaluated during full accreditation. Okay, but after, from nearly 100 standards, about 50 standards, 50 clusters has been formed. Okay, and then for compliance evaluation, we are looking, of course, we are looking into all standards become applicable when the program matches. Okay, and then as a result, we have about 50 clusters, except for COPPA ODL, we have 52 clusters. And then in order to propose the final recommendation, the report has to combine the elements of qualitative reporting as well as quantitative reporting. In order to conclude the overall score, the attainment level need to be converted into numerical values. So in order to convert to numerical values, all the attainment level will be averaged within, based on the clusters, will be averaged to get 7 values, 1 value for each area. And then after that, we are going to use weight and then to come up with the overall score per 100. So these are the formula for provisional accreditation. You might wonder why we have the T, 1/30 there. The T is for normalization because the full mark will be, because it is evaluated based on AL3 only, and then the total weight is 10. So 10 times 3 is 30. For full accreditation and compliance evaluation, the normalizing denominator will become 50. Okay, that is the formula to calculate the overall score. And then based on the score, then we can, based on the 7 values of the achievement in all area, we can also represent in graphical form. For example, if we take example, we can plot in radar graph for provisional accreditation and full accreditation and compliance evaluation to represent the performance of the program after undergoing the accreditation process. Of course, there are some different, because for provisional accreditation, the maximum attainable level is 3, while for full accreditation, the maximum possible attainable level is 5. And for the final decision, this is going to be the last 2 slides. for final decision, of course, the panel need to recommend something for the decision to be considered by the council or the committee. So in recommending that final decision, we have three kind of decision to be made or to be proposed or to be recommended by the panel. First, the professional accreditation can be granted without condition. Second, with condition. And third, denial of professional accreditation. For this matter, the category of professional accreditation without condition is only possible if all the standards been fulfilled. When I say all the standards, mean all the clusters been fulfilled as AL3. So when the clusters has been fulfilled as AL3, theoretically you will have the program will score 100%. But again, we also make mandatory for AL2, for area 2 and area 3 to attain AL3 to get professional accreditation. So the program can also be granted professional accreditation if they can maintain AL3 in all clusters in area 1 and 2. But maybe the problem is struggling to get that achievement in other areas, namely AL3 to 7. Area 3 to 7. So we use 85% cutoff here. If you calculate, because we use 2.5 weight for AL1 and 2, that will give you 50% if all clusters is rated at AL3. But we're also looking into elements of at least AL2 in other standards, not AL1, because AL1 will lead to denial. So if you calculate 2/3 in area 3 to 7, that will give you a total minimum 83.3%. But of course, we will round up to nearest 5. So that's why that's where 85% comes from. And for the full accreditation and compliance evaluation, of course, the accreditation can be granted if you achieve at least AL3 in all standards. Okay, so that will be translated into 60%. So that's why for decision, there will be still 3 types of decision. The first one without condition, the overall score has to be equal or more than 60%. With at least standards and or cluster of standards to be achieved at least AL3, so that will give the program no recommendation. But if there are some AL2 being recorded by the panel, we still stick to 60% because some AL2 need to be balanced with some AL4 or AL5. And then the recommendation will be stated as condition. And then if the score is less than 60%, or there are evaluation of certain standard which is AL1 or below AL1 actually, or below 60%, there will be the decision for denial of accreditation or withdrawal of accreditation. But of course, there will be reasons that will be captured based on unachieved standards. So these are the general framework for the evaluation process. And then after this, we are going to proceed with para session. I believe there are many questions that will be that you want to ask, but hopefully you can give way to my colleagues to present the briefing on each documents, and then we will open for Q&A session after that. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Now we can proceed with the para session. For those who intend to join COPPA documents, you can stay within the channel, the same channel. For those who intend to join COPPA ODL and COPPA, please join the provided link. The link has been provided through emails. Thank you very much. Great. And sorry, another thing is that since now it is 3:20, yeah, so we'll start the presentation at 3:40. 3:40. Yeah. So you may join the presentation at 3:40 p.m. Thank you.
once you're ready.
Just sound check. Dr. Mat, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, sound check, Dr. Mat. Can you hear me?
Okay, bro. Clear? Saya punya suara, bro, dengar?
I can hear you.
Alright.
Slide saya bergerak tak? Saya apa orang kata apa? I'm changing my slides.
Can you move your... Yeah.
Slides moving.
Yep.
Alright, great.
Good. Alhamdulillah.
Okay. Kita tunggu sekejap. Lagi berapa minit? Boleh kot lagi 3 minit kita mula. Takut ada partisipan pergi beli air ke dia pergi apa? Buat air minum.
InsyaAllah.
Alright. We just wait for 3 more minutes and then we start. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Since we are still in the month of Shawwal, I think it is not too late for me to wish all the participants here Selamat Hari Raya. And just to double confirm the sound check, Dr. Mat, clear audio? Okay, thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let us continue on with the presentation on the development of rubrics for evaluation of standards. And this particular session will focus mainly on COPPA. Taking from where Prof. Shahril left off, we will continue on with the presentation. Okay, Prof. Shahril has already introduced the members of this panel. And we have 3 sessions. Currently, you are in the session for COPPA, and I, Suhaimi, has been assigned by Prof. Shahril together with Dr. Mat Isnin from UPSI to conduct the session on COPPA, while the other panel members, they are conducting the parallel session either on COPPA ODL or on COPPA. Okay, this is our main reference now. We are looking at COPPA 2nd edition, which was published in 2018. And for the last 1.5 years, we have been looking at the standards in COPPA 2018. To be exact, there are 98 standards in COPPA 2018. And we look at the standards, and as mentioned by Prof. Shahril, we clustered them into groups of standards that are relevant and can be evaluated together. And based on that approach, we came up with this document that we are sharing with you today. And this document is known as Guidelines to Evaluation of Standards for COPPA. Now, before there is a series of questions asking, when are we going to use this? Let me explain that this is basically an engagement session with the panel of assessors and MQA officers to show you the first draft of what we have and to get feedback from you. So this document is not meant to be used at present. So our practice at present is still going as business as usual until this document is approved by MQA management, and then notification is sent out to the higher education providers with the exact date as to when this guideline to evaluation of standards will be in full effect. Okay, so when this document is in operation, we hope to be within this year, at least by the end of the year, we hope this will be in operation. When this document is available, then it becomes necessary for us to be reading COPPA and the guideline to evaluation of standards together. So these 2 documents should be read together in order for us to understand on how to evaluate. As far as the HEP is concerned, they will be reading these documents together on how to prepare the self-evaluation document or the self-assessment report. But as for panel, we'll be looking at this document for us to guide in the evaluation during accreditation. Right. The document for evaluation has been structured into 4 sections. Section 1 is the introduction. Section 2 is the guide to evaluation of standards for program accreditation for provisional accreditation. Section 3 will be evaluation of standards for full accreditation and compliance evaluation. So in other words, section 2, that is related to MQF 01, whereas section 3, this is related to MQF 02 and 04. And then, of course, section 4 just now, it will deal with the methodology of rating and final recommendation that has been elaborated by Prof. Shahril before we had our 10-minute break just now. Now, with regards to COPPA 2018, with regards to the version 2, there are 98 standards in the Code of Practice. For provisional accreditation, the panel has found it relevant, has found that only 48 of the standards are relevant to provisional accreditation because the remaining of the program, the remaining of the standards can only be evaluated after the program has been running. So before the program runs, only 48 standards are relevant. And for the 48 standards, we managed to group together standards that can be evaluated together into 28 clusters. Whereas for full accreditation, out of the 98 standards, we found that 97 of the standards are relevant. The only one that's not relevant at the point of graduation is a report on alumni. So at that point of time, the students have just graduated, so it makes no sense for the university to report on this on alumni's achievement. So that's why there is only 97 standards out of the 98. This 97 standard, we cluster into 49, we group them together under 49 clusters. And finally, for compliance evaluation, all the 98 standards are relevant, and the 98 standards are clustered into, are grouped into 50 clusters. Area 1 has been covered by Prof. Shahril just now. And let us look at Area 2. Area 2 focus on assessment of student learning. There are 11 standards. There are 11 standards in COPPA that comes under Area 2. As for provisional accreditation, only 7 standards are relevant, and that is being evaluated that has been grouped into 5 clusters. And similarly, for full accreditation, for full accreditation and compliance evaluation, all the existing 11 standards are relevant, and these are evaluated. Has been grouped into 5 clusters for the purpose of evaluation. So what I will do is I will basically focus on Section 3. I will focus on Section 3 and choosing the standards and clusters that are applicable to full accreditation, while making comments if they are not applicable to the provisional accreditation. So that will be the approach that I'm taking. Area 2, we have 3 sub-areas, namely relationship between assessment and learning outcome. Another substandard, sub-area, assessment method, and the third sub-area is management of student assessment. And as I've mentioned just now, for full accreditation, all the 11 standards are relevant for full accreditation, and the 11 standards are basically grouped into 5 clusters. So the first cluster, we call it cluster 2.1a in Section 3. It puts together 2 standards, 211 and 212. These 2 standards actually focus on assessment principles and practices that are current and ensuring constructive alignment and ensuring that the learning outcomes are being measured, are being assessed in the correct taxonomy domain and at the correct MQF level of certification. So this cluster is applicable, these 2 standards are applicable for provisional, full, and compliance evaluation. Let's have a look at the rubric or the assessment rubric, the assessment rubric, page 53. Now let me take this to page 53. These are the 2 standards that I've mentioned to you just now, basically looking at the assessment and making sure that they are being assessed at the right level and in the right domain. I will not be elaborating on level 1 and level 2 because this means that they have not fulfilled the 2 standards. Level 3, you fulfill both the standards. You have addressed the principles, method, and practices, and you make sure that the level of assessment is in the right taxonomy domain and at the right MQF level. How do we go about to get attainment level 4 and 5? So attainment level 4 will only come if you have made all those measurements and you make an analysis on those measurements to ensure constructive alignment and the learning outcome and the competency levels are on the right track and perhaps improving. Level 5, attainment level 5, you're talking about constructive alignment of the assessment to ensure that there is an improvement in the student learning experience. The code of practice uses learning experience and not learning satisfaction. Learning experience meaning that the students have now acquired things, additional things that they know, acquired additional skills that they can perform, acquired additional attitude that is in line with the profession that have they intend to join. So basically, this is the rubric for the first cluster in area 2. I'll move on to the next cluster. The next cluster focus on standard 2.2.1 and 2.2.2. These two standards focus on current and diverse tools in assessing learning outcomes. And you are to ensure that these tools are valid, credible, reliable, fair, leading to good learning experience. Again, the phrase learning experience comes in. And these two standards in cluster 2.2a, they are applicable for the 3 levels of accreditation, provisional, full, and compliance evaluation. Let's have a look at the rubric. And this would be on page 54. So page 54, the two clusters, and again, we look at how do we go about if we want to get attainment level that is higher than 3. 3 meaning you have complied to the standards. 4, the outcome and competencies, in other words, the learning outcomes that you have measured are analyzed and being used to improve further the assessment tools. And level 5, there is regular review of this document and the innovative assessment tools to ensure constructive alignment to the domains of the learning outcome being assessed. So one is aspect of analysis is there, same as cluster 2.1a. So this is an important aspect, not only measure, but we have to analyze. And then you need to regularly review these documents. So the next group would be standard 2.23, 2.24. This is what we call cluster 2.2b. 2.2b. And this actually focus on policies, regulation, on assessment, and the importance of keeping the stakeholder, especially the student, informed. You have your procedures, and sometimes you make changes. These changes must go with certain procedures. They must be documented, and you must inform the students in a timely and systematic manner. And 2.2.3 is applicable for all stages of accreditation, provisional, full, and compliance evaluation. However, 2.2.4 is not applicable for provisional accreditation because you only have the policy. The students have not gone through the policy. You have not reviewed it yet. So it is not fair to be assessing under provisional accreditation 2.2.4. And looking at the rubric on page 55, let's have a look. Satisfy the two standards for full and compliance evaluation, you will get attainment level 3. For attainment level 4, we are looking at you have been conducting regular review of these policies, and there is a communication plan. There is a communication plan or mechanism to convey this information to the student. If that is clear, you have attained attainment level 4. And now, you also make this improvement by getting feedback from the stakeholder and also benchmarking against good practices. In other words, you look at other universities, you look at other institutions, look at the practices, what is good that you are lacking behind, you adopt those practices. Then you can get attainment level 4, attainment level 5. But make sure that your attainment level 4 is fully attained first before you start doing the benchmarking and all that. Okay. Now we look at the next set of standards that comes under 2.3. There are 5 standards: 231, 233, 234, and 235. This comes under one cluster. We call it 2.3a, and then there is 2.3.2, which is applicable for provisional and compliance evaluation, and also 2.32 that is applicable for full accreditation and compliance evaluation. So this focus on how the department manage and improve assessment, including safety, timely communication of exam results, and appeal procedures. So again, 2.21, 2.22, 2.3, 3.4, 3.5, they are applicable for full and compliance evaluation, whereas 2.32 is applicable for all 3 levels. And if you want to look at the hierarchy of the rubric, the performance, then we look on page 56. This is what we have. Attainment level 3 is basically fulfilling all the 5 standards, whereas attainment level 4, you are talking about being effective and being efficient. Being efficient means that we are looking your performance against the resources that you put in, and being effective is we are looking at whether your system works under any condition. Okay. And level 5 is you conduct benchmarking with other institutions and you implement good practices. So more or less you're looking at doing analysis and then to show that your processes are efficient and effective, and then you do benchmarking to see what other good practices that you can adopt and learning from others as well. And I think that would have covered the section on area 2. So I'll stop sharing and I will pass the platform to Dr. Mat, who will take you through areas 3 to 6, and then I'll come back to do area 7. Over to you, Dr. Mat.
Thank you very much, Prof. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First thing first, hopefully you guys can hear my voice.
Loud and clear.
All right, I'm trying to share the screen. So hopefully you guys can see my...
Yes, we're seeing your screen.
All right.
Nampak.
Right.
Okay, that's good.
All right, thank you, Prof. So I'm going to covering area 3, which is student selections. For area 3, student selection and support services. So basically under COPPA second edition, we have 20 number of standard. But for provisional accreditation, we have 8 applicable standard, and we have grouped it into 7 cluster. For full accreditation, we have 19 standard applicable, and we have grouped that into 11 cluster. And finally, for compliance evaluation audit, we have 20 standard, and we group it into 12 cluster. So this is the detail of area 3, student selection. I'm sure as a panel of assessor, you guys have a good experience of looking into this area, where we have 3.1 for student selection, 3.2 for articulation and transfer, 3.3 support services, 3.4 student representation and participation, and 3.5 alumni. Let's look into the slide. You can realize that 3.5 have been put an asterisk there because for area 3.5 is not applicable for PE. So to go deeper, I hope that you guys have the document of the rubric together with you guys, where I'm gonna run through from a sub area per sub area to ensure that everybody can get the gist of what we're going to do with the rubric. So basically, this is 3.1 student selection under provisional accreditation. For provisional accreditation under 3.1 student selection, we have 2 cluster, which is cluster 3.1A and cluster 3.1B. For cluster 3.1A, it is actually a combination of cluster 3.11 and cluster 3.12, whereas for cluster 3.1B is a standalone standard from 3.14. So if you want to look into the detail, because this is a provisional accreditation, the entitlement level for provisional accreditation is AL1 until AL3. So basically, if you look into AL3, they're gonna put the statement of the as mentioned by Prof. Sharir, the statement of standard 3.11 and 3.12. To look more detail for the rubric, please refer page 16 and page 17. And then next, still again under 3.1 student selection. Now we're moving into for full accreditation and compliance evaluation. We have 3 cluster, which is 3.1A, 3.1B, and 3.1C. For 3.1A, it is combination of two standard, which is 3.11 and 3.12, whereas for 3.1B is a standalone standard coming from standard 3.13, where it's mentioned about the student enrollment must be related to the capacity of the department to effectively deliver the program. And for cluster 3.1C, we have the combination of, we cluster it together two standard which have similarities or linkages, which is standard 3.14 and standard 3.15. This is on appeal mechanism and the remedial support to assist students, including incoming transfer students who are in need. Since this is a full accreditation and compliance evaluation, the entertainment level for this three cluster is using 5 entertainment level, and the entertainment level 3 basically will stated back the standard mentioned in this cluster. For example, if you are in cluster 3.1A, if you attain entertainment level is level 3, then basically you are achieving both standard 3.11 and 3.12. To look more detail for the rubric, I appreciate if you guys can refer to page 56, 57, and 58. And if you guys have any feedback, please send back the feedback through the mechanism that have been passed by MQA to ensure that we as a panel get the input, and hopefully that input we can put back into the development of this rubric. That is 3.1. Now we're moving into 3.2. This is for provisional accreditation. Under 3.2 A, cluster 3.2A, we have only one standalone rubric, which is standalone standard, which is 3.2.1. So since this is a provisional accreditation level, then we have 3 entertainment level. So this is on the articulation and transfer, where for standard 3.21, the department must have well-defined policies and mechanisms to facilitate student mobility, including student transfer within and between institutions as well as of cross-border. So for 3.2A, for 3.2, for full accreditation and compliant evaluation, we have one cluster, which is 3.2A, which is a combination of cluster 3.21 and cluster 3.22. To get the detail of the rubric, entertainment level of the rubric, which is from 1 to 5, please refer page 59. And if you guys have any feedback, please let us know so that we can work on that. That is area sub-area 3.2. Now we're moving into sub-area 3.3, which is student support services. Under 3.3, we have 3 clusters. This is for provisional accreditation. We have cluster 3.3A, 3.3B, and 3.3C. So if you realize for these 3 clusters, it only use one standalone cluster. So if you realize what happened is actually that we have a combination of standard and we have a standalone standard. So for this case of 3 cluster 3.3A, cluster 3.3B, and cluster 3.3C, you can see that it's actually referring or using only one standard on a standalone standard for each cluster each cluster. So for the detail of the entertainment level, please refer page 18, 19, and 20. Moving forward into full accreditation and compliance evaluation. This is for 3.3 student support services, we have 4. Okay, all right. So basically, we have we have 5 cluster, which is 3.3A, 3.3B, 3.3C, 3.3D, and 3.3E. Only standalone cluster is 3.3E and 3.3C and 3.3B, whereas 3.3A and 3.3D is a combination of either for 3.3A is a combination of 3 standard, for 3.3D is a combination of 2 standard, which is 3.35 and 3.37. So to get all the detail on the entertainment level between 1 to 5, please refer to page 60 until 64. So hopefully we can get some feedback from you guys there. All right, that is subsection 3.3. We are moving into subsection 3.4, which is student representation and participation. If you realize this is for provisional accreditation, they have only one cluster, which is 3.4A, and only using one standard, which is standard 3.41 regarding the dissemination of policy and process for active student engagement, especially in the areas that affect their interest and welfare. For the entertainment level rubric, you can refer page 21. It covers entertainment level 1 until entertainment level 3. For the entertainment level 3, it will state back the what we call it, the statement from standard 3.4.1. So that is for area 3.4. And next one is still in the area for 3.4, student representation and participation. This one is full accreditation and compliance evaluation. You realize we have 2 cluster, which is cluster 3.4A, and another one is cluster 3.4B. For both cluster under 3.4, which is 3.4A and B, it is actually a combination of 2 standard in one cluster. So for 3.4A, it is combination of standard 3.4.1 and 3.4.2, while for cluster 3.4B, it is a combination of 3.3 and 3.4 standard. Standard 3.44, which is regarding the student activities an organization must be facilitated to encourage character building, and including the student must be facilitated to develop linkages with external stakeholders. So I'm sure you guys used to be get used to this standard, but this is how we clustered. And for the detail of the rubric, please refer page 66 and 67. That, and finally, we're moving into sub area 3.5. This is quite interesting for area 3.5. If you realize, area 3.5 are not covered in provisional accreditation and full accreditation, but will be covered under what we call it compliance evaluation only, where the entertainment level rubric, you can refer page 68, where under cluster 3.5A, you have only one standard, which involve the linkages. The department must foster active linkages with alumni to develop, review, and continuously improve the program. So that's for area 3. Now I'm moving into area 4 for academic staff. There's 15 number of standard. This is coming from the COPPA second edition. And for provisional accreditation, we have 6 applicable standard, and we have 3 clustered. For full accreditation, we have 15 applicable standard, and we have grouped it into 5 clusters. And for the same thing goes to the compliance evaluation audit, which is we have 15 applicable standard, and we have 5 cluster. We group those standard into 5 clusters. So for area 4, so basically there's only two sub area, which is 4.1 recruitment and management and 4.2 service and development. So this is what happened for sub area 4.1. This is for provisional accreditation. For 4.1 recruitment and management, there's two clusters that have been developed, which is cluster 4.1A, which cover the standard 4.11. It's a standalone standard, whereas for cluster 4.1B, it is actually the combination of three standard, which is 4.12, 4.16, and 4.17. To get the detail of the rubric, as an assessor, please refer page 22 and 23. Now I'm moving into 4.1 for full accreditation and compliance evaluation audit. There's three clusters that have been developed, which is cluster 4.1A, developed from three standard, which is 4.11, 4.13, and 4.14. For cluster 4.1B, it is a combination of four standard, which is 4.12, 4.15, 4.16, and 4.17. Okay, and finally for full accreditation and compliance evaluation audit, we have the last cluster 4.1C, which is covering only one standalone standard, which is 4.18. To get more detail on the rubric, please refer page 69, 71, and 72 for each cluster. Now I'm moving into the second subsection under area 4. Area 4 only have two areas, 4.1 and 4.2. Under 4.2 for provisional accreditation, there's only one cluster, which cover two standard, standard 4.21 and standard 4.23. So this is regarding policy addressing matter related to services, development and appraisal of the academic. At the same time, the clear policy on conflict of interest and the professional conduct, including procedure for handling disciplinary case among academic staff. So for 4.2, for full accreditation and compliance evaluation audit, we have two cluster, which is 4.2. Cluster 4.2A are developed from three standard, 4.21, 4.23, and 4.24, whereas another cluster under 4.2 is cluster 4.2B, which developed from the combination of four standard, which is standard 4.22, 4.25, 4.26, and 4.27. All these are regarding service and development for academic staff. So to look into the entertainment level rubric, please refer page 73 and 75. So now I'm moving into the next area, which is area 5, educational resources. Under educational resources, we have only 10 number of standard, but for provisional accreditation, we have only applicable only 5. We developed 2 cluster. For full accreditation, we have 10 applicable standard, but we develop into construct it into 5 cluster. The same thing goes to compliance evaluation. So to look more detail for 5.1, we have 5.1 physical facilities, 5.2 research and development, and 5.3 financial resources. If you realize area 4, sub area 5.2 are not applicable for PA. So next, I'm gonna detail out what are the things in each sub area of area 5 educational resources. So now we're moving into 5.1. 5.1 is on sub area physical resources. We develop one cluster. We call it cluster 5.1A. Cluster 5.1A is a combination of cluster from 5.11 and 5.12. So again, as a reminder for you guys, for PA, the entertainment level is only 3, AL1 until AL3. So if you give the education provider AL3, so basically they has fulfilled both standard 5.11 and standard 5.12. So to look into the detail for this one, please look into page 26. We're moving into full accreditation for 4.1 physical resources for full accreditation and compliance evaluation audit. There's two clusters have been developed, which is cluster 5.1A and cluster 5.1B. For cluster 5.1B, it is actually coming from one standalone standard, which is specifically for library or resource center, where the library or the resource center must have adequate and up-to-date references, reference material, and qualified staff that meet the needs of the program and research among academic staff and students. But for cluster 5.1A, there's 3 standard use under 5.1A, which is standard 5.11, standard 5.12, standard 5.14. This is regarding on physical resources. To get more detail, please be reminded that this is for full accreditation and CE evaluation audit. So basically, you have 5 entertainment level. So if you have, if the higher education provider achieving level 3, so basically for cluster 5.1A, the PPT have fulfilled 3 standard, which is 5.11, 5.12, and 5.14. So the next one is for full accreditation and CE for 5.2, which is sub area of research and development. Under research and development, we have 2 clusters, cluster 5.2A and 5.2B. But for 5.2B, coming from standalone standard, which is for 5.22, this is regarding the interaction between research and learning must be reflected in the curriculum to ensure that it influence current teaching and encourage and prepare students for the engagement in the research, scholarship, and development. Whereas for cluster 5.2A, it is a combination of standard 5.21 and 5.23. So for the detail of the rubric, please refer page 50. So now we're moving into final resources, sub-area 5.3, and the 5.3 for professional accreditation. There's only one cluster, 5.3A, and the 5.3A, there's 3 standard coming from under or used under cluster 5.2A, 3A, which is 5.31, 5.32, and 5.33. Whereas for full accreditation, for 5.3A, we have only one, under sub-area financial resources, area 5.3, we have one cluster only, which is cluster 5.3A, which is comprised of 3 standards. So the detail of the entertainment level rubric, please refer page 82. So now we're moving into, for my last section, for my part, before I pass back to Prof. Suhaimi, on area 6, which is program management. For program management, basically COPPA second edition have outlined 16 number of standard. For provisional accreditation, 7 only applicable. We have developed it, we have constructed it into 4 cluster, whereas for full accreditation, we have 15 applicable standard, and we use, we develop 8 cluster. And for compliance evaluation audit, if you realize, we have 16 applicable and 9 cluster. If you realize there's a difference between full accreditation and compliant evaluation, this one is particularly, there's one section that I'm going to highlight, so that as an assessor, you need to consider and took into consideration of some section on area 6. All right, let's look into the sub area of 6, including 6.1, which is a program management, 6.2 program leadership, 6.3 administrative staff, and 6.4 academic record. For 6.3, if you realize I did put some asterisk there, is not applicable for provisional accreditation. So let's look into the specific for 6.1. Under 6.1, we have developed 2 clusters, 6.1A and 6.1B. 6.1B is a standalone standard, which is regarding the academic board of the department must be an effective decision-making body with adequate degree of autonomy. Whereas for 6.1A, it is combination of standard 6.11 and 6.13. This is for your information. This is a provisional accreditation. So the entertainment level is still again between 1 into 3. If the higher education provider have achieved entertainment level 3, so basically he has fulfilled both 6.11 and 6.13 for cluster 6.1A. So the next one is full accreditation under 6.1 again. But if you realize the only difference in this section, sub area 6.1 program management, basically we have 4 cluster that applicable for full accreditation, and 1 cluster 6.8 that applicable fully in 6.1E, which is applicable for we call it CE audit. In this case, if you ask me 6.1E, did we review or did we doing the assessment for 6.1E during the full accreditation? Yes, we need to do the assessment on 6.1E, but with a limited focus where we don't concentrate on graduate employability analysis. Where in 6.16, which is under cluster 6.1E, graduate employability analysis only can be obtained during the CE audit. So that's the only difference for 6.1 subsection 6.1 program management, where under 6.1 we have 4 cluster for full accreditation and 1 cluster for CE. So that is 6.1. We are moving into 6.2, which is sub area program leadership. Under provisional accreditation, we have only 1 cluster, which is cluster 6.2A. 6.2A is a combination of 6.21 and 6.22. So again, this is a provisional accreditation. The entertainment level is between 1 to 3. So if the higher education provider has fulfilled cluster 6.2A, then the higher education provider basically have fulfilled AL3, which again use back the statement of standard 6.21, 6. and 6.22. So for program leadership sub area 6.2, this is for full accreditation and compliance evaluation audit. We have construct 2 cluster, which is cluster 6.2A and 6.2B. For cluster 6.2B, it is actually extracted from standard 6.2.3, whereas for cluster 6.2A is a combination of standard 6.21 and 6.22, which is the appointment and the responsibility of program leader, and the program leader must have a appropriate qualification. So this is 6.2 for full accreditation and compliance evaluation audit. So next one, we're moving into sub area 6.3 for full accreditation and compliance evaluation audit. Under 6.3 administrative staff, we will have only one cluster. This cluster, which is cluster 6.3A, basically a derivation from three standard, which is 6.31, 6.32, and 6.33. To look into more detail of the entertainment level, since this is a full accreditation and compliance evaluation audit purposes for sub area 6.3, cluster 6.3A, then you should look into page 91. And next one is we're moving into sub area 6.4, which is the academic report. Only one cluster applicable for provisional accreditation, which is cluster 6.4A. Under 6.4A, there's two standard that have been used to get the cluster of 6.4A, which is which is standard 6.41 and standard 6.43. To look into the entertainment level, again, as I mentioned to you, this is a provisional accreditation. The entertainment level is between 1 to 3 and is the higher education provider achieving entertainment 3. Then, so basically, you have covered both standard 6.1 and 6.43 under the cluster of 6.4A. So for the full accreditation and compliance evaluation audit, sub area 6.4, we have only one cluster, which is cluster 6.4A. Under 6.4A, that's cluster 6.4A cover 4 standard, which is standard 6.41, 6.42, 6.43, and 6.44. So this is a full accreditation and CE audit. So for the entertainment level 1 to 5, please refer page 92. So I think that's for up until area 6. Now I'm going to stop my sharing and I'm going to pass back to Prof. Sohaimi, so that Prof. Sohaimi is going to wrap up for area 7, and then we're going to open for a Q&A session after Prof. Sohaimi finish area 7. Prof, pass back to you, Prof.
Dr. Mike, we need to do sound check again. Just now during your presentation, I got I was kicked out of the session.
Oh, okay.
And I have rejoined.
Your voice is clear and loud and clear,
And
Prof.
I'm sharing my PowerPoint now. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, I can see. Can you click so that we can see the
Okay.
transition? All right,
The
I can see
transition?
the
All right.
transition.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, bro.
Okay, now we are in the last area, which is program monitoring and review of CQI. For this particular area, I will take the same approach as I did with area 2. There are 9 standards in COPPA, and the 9 standards are applicable for full accreditation and compliance evaluation. And out of the 9 standards, we group them into 5 clusters. And whereas for provisional accreditation of the 9 standards, only 4 standards are applicable, and the 4 standards are grouped into 3 clusters. And the area 7, we only have one sub area, which is 7.1. And these 7 sub areas has got 9 standards, 9 standards. And the first two standards that we put together is 7.11 and 7.13. And this comes under cluster 7.1A. And basically, the 2 standards focus on policies and committee for monitoring and review, including CQI of academic program. And the 2 standards are applicable for provisional, full, and compliance evaluation. And the rubrics are shown on page 98. If we can have a look at page 98, look at the rubric. Of course, at attainment level 3, you need to satisfy both the standards and what do we need to do in order to get attainment level 4. Attainment level 4, you're talking about performing the review. The review actually ensures the currency and relevancy of your program. So in other words, it is still relevant with the needs of the industry. So the program review must show that it is taking on board the changes in the industry, both in terms of the use of technology and the body of knowledge. Attainment level 5, you're talking about not only that you have done the review, you come up with action plans for continuous improvement so that to ensure that the program remains relevant and current. Okay, let's move on to the next cluster. The next cluster puts together two standards, 712 and 719. These two standards actually focus on the QA unit, the quality assurance unit at the college, faculty or department, and the link of the QA processes to the institutional purposes. So in other words, we're looking at the how the interaction between the QA unit at the faculty, department or college with the institutional QA unit, and then we are looking at how they carry out the activities of quality assurance at the unit in relation to the institutional purposes. Again, these two standards are applicable for provisional, full, and compliance evaluation. And the rubric, let's have a look on page 99. What do we require if we would like to get our program to be on attainment level 4 and attainment level 5? Attainment level 5, we're looking at the relationship between the QA unit at the faculty level and the institutional level ensures smooth coordination. There is good relation, a good process. In other words, good process, good reporting mechanism, and so on at the unit and the university level. So this would give you attainment level 4. And at attainment level 5, the quality unit at the program level or the department level, faculty or college is led by a certified quality officer. There has been question in the first session what constitute a qualified quality officer, quality assurance officer. And then I think we will take the approach at the moment. MQA recognizes a certified quality officer as those who have gone through the quality officer training that has been conducted by MQA. And then not only that it's been led by a qualified, by a certified quality officer, it provides a smooth coordination and synergy, and it results in a sustainable IQA ecosystem. And it is benchmarked and recognized by other institutions. So at in this particular cluster, in order to get attainment level 5, you have become exemplary, and other institutions are coming to visit and to learn from you how you are managing your internal quality assurance system in such a way that you have established a sustainable IQA ecosystem. So that is the cluster related to that standard. And then we move on to the next cluster, cluster 7.1C. In this cluster, we put together standard 714 and standard 715. And these two standards focus on engagement with stakeholders in improving the program. So this is applicable for compliance evaluation only. You see, there was a question just now on the Q&A board, whether we can consider external examiners report as engagement with stakeholder. External examiners report is a specific requirement of the standard which you have to provide, and this is another requirement of the standard that you engage further stakeholders, and you engage further stakeholders so that you get feedback from different forces, different sources, and then you will be able to do triangulation and make better decisions on how to improve your program. So let's look at the rubric for cluster 7.1C, which is on page 100. So in order to move on from attainment level 3 to attainment level 4, you are talking about engaging all relevant stakeholders. Engaging all relevant stakeholders, meaning that you engage the students, the lecturers, the regulators, employers, and alumni. So these are the commonly accepted stakeholders who have direct interest. Yeah? And their views are considered in your curriculum review. There should be evidence of their views being put forward, and the views are deliberated. Whether you are taking it on board or you're rejecting, there must be justification for it, and this must be evidence-based. And the level 5, you engage a wider spectrum of stakeholders, meaning that you go beyond the 5. You may be engaging perhaps NGOs and so on, and all your engagement, getting feedbacks, you come up with improvements, and this improvement leads to the improvement of graduate attributes, meaning that you're talking about your graduates' attainment of the program learning outcome. You can see improvement from one cohort to the other cohort. So at the point of doing full accreditation, I don't imagine a program will be able to get attainment level 5, because when you talk about improvement of the graduates, this would be shown during compliance evaluation. After the program have graduated a few cohorts, then you'll be able to make an analysis looking at the trends of achievement of the graduate attributes. That is when you can establish whether you can actually show that the attributes of your graduate or the learning outcome of your graduates have been improved. Okay, let's go back to, I think, the last cluster or second last, I lost count. Okay, in this cluster 7.1D, we put together two standards, 716 and 718. 718, and these two standards focus on analysis to improve the program based on students' performance, progression, attrition, and also graduate employability. And this is applicable for compliance evaluation. And of course, the rubric for that cluster looks something like this. If you fulfill the minimum, the two standards, you get attainment level 3. But should you, I got to move this a bit. I got to close this. And now for attainment level 4, your program assessment is not limited to what has been spelled out in the two standards. It's not limited to student performance, progression, attrition, graduation, employment. There are other aspects that you want to take, additional aspects that you take on, analyze, and then monitor them for the purpose of CQI. And finally, your practices here would eventually lead to good or best practices. And again, we are looking at the stage where your program can become exemplary. So that's when you'll be, you can claim that you have achieved the attainment level number 5. Okay, okay, this is the final one, the 5th cluster, 7.1E. This applies to collaborative arrangement. This focus on responsibility for monitoring and reviewing the offering of collaborative program. So this is applicable for PA, FA, and compliance evaluation. And what does the rubric look like? For attainment level 4, we are talking about the partners actually participate. Partners actually participate actively in the monitoring and review of the program. And level 5, they participate responsibly in the sense that they are participating in the implementation of the monitoring of the action plans. You participate, you monitor, and then you have an action plan. Your partners also play a very responsible role in implementing and monitoring the action plans. So those are the 5 clusters that is associated with the standards in area 7. So I think that concludes our presentation from area 2 to area 7, of course, including area 1 just now by Prof. Sharil at the beginning. In our first opening session, Prof. Sharil took us through area 1. So we have covered all the 7 areas. From the 7 areas, we look at the relevant standards that are applicable for provisional, full, and compliance evaluation, and the relevant standards are then grouped into clusters. And once we have the clustering, we develop the rubric, and we look at basically in the presentation, we focus on attaining the minimum requirement, which is attainment level 3, meeting the standards, and then most of attainment level 4 focus on analysis leading to effectiveness and efficiency of your program. And finally, attainment level 5 focus on analysis that leads you to become better and better, that you become exemplary. So I think I will stop sharing now and let us focus on the Q&A session. There were some questions just now before I was kicked off the platform. Some of the questions I have answered, but when I came back, there was no more question. Now we have only one.
We have two, bro.
Saya dapat satu saja dekat sini dalam saya, ataupun boleh Dr. Mat kongsikan your screen. Kongsikan your screen and you put up the question and answer, because something is wrong with me. The system just now, something is wrong with my my network. Kalau Dr. Mat boleh kongsikan apa yang dia, dua soalan tu apa dia?
Problem nampak?
Nampak Dr. Mat, kalau nampak tu nampaklah, baca tak boleh, halisan boleh baca. Dr. Mat tolong baca boleh?
Saya bacakan dulu, bro.
Boleh.
First one is, how do we assess student learning experience? That was the first question from Malika Jasamai. The second question is, okay, boleh?
Satu-satu. By the way, I noticed Prof. Sharil is also in this group and Cik Kamarul is also in this group. Nanti kalau saya jawab apa-apa yang perlu tambahan, Dr. Mat boleh tambah, Prof. Sharil boleh tambah, dan minta tolong juga Cik KB, Cik Kamarul untuk tambah. Well, learning experience is looking at how the student can actually feel that they have been transformed. Transformed in the sense that in terms of knowledge, they have acquired more knowledge. In terms of skill, they will be able, so they are able to do certain tasks or to demonstrate a higher level of skill. And also they may have shown a higher degree of responsibility, a higher degree of commitment, if you're talking about attitude. So these sort of things, measurement would come in the form of an indirect measurement, or sometimes in a direct measurement through your projects or your assignment. But it is important to note that there is a very distinct difference between capturing student learning experience and student satisfaction. Mainly what the HEPs, higher education providers, are doing is they are capturing the students' satisfaction. How do they find the facilities and all that? So from least satisfactory to most satisfactory. That is not learning experience. Learning experience is looking at how do you find, has the course improved your knowledge from a certain level to a certain level. So you are talking about learning experience, whether the students can actually feel that they have grown, whether they have progressed, whether they have successfully understood the course, the material, and all that. So my suggestion is you should get in touch with your center of teaching and learning in your own institution, and then make a request for them to start conducting programs or courses or training on student learning experience. There is a vast material in the literature addressing the issue of student learning experience. Okay.
Okay, Prof. We're moving into the second question. Is the weightage for all clusters the same? Example within each area.
Prof. Sharia, you want to address this? Prof. Sharia? Because I believe that in Prof. Shari's presentation, we saw that Area 1 and Area 2, the weightage was given a point of 2.5 and 2.5. The other areas, they were given 1. So they are not equally distributed. Prof. Shari.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. Fahmi. Okay, basically, yeah, I think, what is, in the question is actually correct, because when we calculate the score or the achievement for the area level achievement, it is normal average. So when you apply normal average, the default weight is 1 actually. But of course, we only apply weights for the overall score to put emphasis on certain area. Thank you.
Okay, soalan seterusnya Dr. Mat.
Okay, Prof. I think we have another last 2 questions. This is from Linda Abdul Hamid. Hi, Prof. Currently, program with 2U2I have been evaluated with COPPA, FA document and visit, and also 2U2I requirement for another report and site visit. Any future plan in improving or simplifying this evaluation? This is regarding 2U2I, Prof.
Prof Syarif nak respon? Dia bos ada kat sini, kita bagi bos dulu.
Okay, the question is about the U2I program being evaluated using COPPA. Yeah, I believe you can use the same standard because this is still a program that complies with all the COPPA standards. The only thing is that there are significant element of WBL components. So I think, yeah, am I answering the questions?
I think you're right, Prof. Sebab
Because
apa?
I didn't see any reason why it's not applicable. It is applicable for all the COPPA standards. It's applicable because we still have components like the top courses as well as the WBL component and culminating projects.
Dia, in my opinion, kita ada COPPA, and when you look at the program, it's being delivered conventionally ataupun apa orang kata WBL ataupun ODL ataupun you consider it's a TVET program. Now at present, kita cuma ada 3 sahaja. ODL is clear, kena ikut ODL. Yang TVET kena ikut TVET. Other from these 2 categories, we still have to follow COPPA. Cumanya kalau to you to I, COPPA itu you have to use COPPA together with WBL guideline. So they go, it has to be read together. So I would say that at present that is how we address that.
Yeah, agree.
Okay, Prof. I think that's on chat. We have covered all the question. Only on the webinar chat, I can see that the 2 question. The first one, can the University QA officer is one of the MQA panel? That was the first one.
Apa dia? Kat mana you baca tu?
Dekat webinar chat. Belah kanan.
Chat. Webinar chat.
The QA question means say that non-academics. I think the question asking about whether or not non-academics, QA officer who is non-academics can be a panel, a QA panel. I believe you can answer this question, right, Prof. Zami?
If a non-academic can be a panel, according to our practice, tak dengar ke? Are you hearing me?
Yeah. I need
Dengar
to
tak? Dr. Mat, dengar Dr. Mat? Boleh dengar ke saya cakap? Boleh, okay. The current practice now, we are using 2 academics and 1 person from the industry. So that practice is a precedence to say that a non-academic can also become a panel. So tak ada issue. There is no issue for that.
Right, Prof. I think this is going to be the last one yang saya tengok dekat webinar chat. For example, in the student learning experience can be assessed on project carried out linked to it learning outcome.
The project basically allows you to measure the student learning outcome. Okay, the project allows you to measure the student learning outcome. The learning experience is for you to get into the student, to get the students to realize what they have learned. For them to be able to say that previously I can only understand, but now I understand more and I can apply. So that is the learning experience that is going on. So when you talk about learning experience, it is more on how the student have grown and how the student have progressed in going through those exercises. So the project itself allows the student, allows you to measure the learning outcome, but you should also conduct a separate assessment on the, which is not graded. The student learning experience is not graded, for you to capture whether the cohort has actually felt that they have become better. So that's the difference between the assessment of learning outcome and then establishing the learning experience.
All right, I think that's the last one, Prof. If you want to wrap up the session, silakan.
Okay, kalau tak ada apa-apa lagi, thank you very much to all the participants. I believe the participants are basically fellow panels and our MQA officers. You have been instrumental in, ensuring that the quality of higher education in the country keeps on improving. And we sincerely hope that this guideline for evaluation of standards in COPPA would make your task much more focused and much more objective in evaluation. And we hope to have this document approved by MQA's top management, and then later on notified to the higher institution providers on when it will come into effect. So at this point of time of our exercise, we would appreciate very much on your comments on two things. Number one, the clustering. Okay, the clustering, is there anything that from your perspective that you thought the clustering is not appropriate or there should be further clustering? That is one. Number two, once we look at the clustering, whether the rubrics, the expectation of levels 3, 4, and 5 are reasonable and can be achievable by our higher education providers. So on behalf of our chairman, Prof. Shahril, my colleagues, my panel members, and also the secretariat, and a special thanks to Cik Kamaru Bakri. He has been throughout the whole day lah. Hari ni rasanya Cik Kamaru has been with us to take note of what comments have been made, and your feedbacks we would value very much. And after this, I believe we will be sitting together with Prof. Shahril to deliberate on your comments and suggestions before we make a final adjustment to the draft, and then we will submit to the top management. So with that, thank you very much, and take care, and hopefully whatever that we do will become, will be amal jariah yang kita buatlah bersama-sama. Okey, terima kasih banyak. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.